there are some personality disorders that you probably wouldn't see in a spiritual teacher. Like, well, you probably wouldn't see borderline personality disorder because there's too much anger with it. And that's not acceptable in spirituality. But you might see narcissistic personality disorder, avoidant personality disorder. Those are often so connected to emotional repression. But they don't, see, you can get away with those disorders as a teacher, and here's how. Because the grandiose narcissist teacher looks like they're very charismatic and has it all together. And you don't see their personal life. So if they treat their partners like shit, you don't see it. They just show you what they show you. But their partners can tell you what it's like. And your hunches are probably accurate if you feel something, unless it's a shadow of yours, that teaching and being a public figure attracts people with personality disorders, I think. And that's why everybody talks about it. And there's so many Netflix documentaries on it. But the one that you don't hear about a lot is avoidant personality disorder. Or I don't. But it's there. And, you know, I had more than an avoidant attachment style. For the first 35 years of my life, I could have been clinically diagnosed with avoidant personality disorder because it goes beyond just being avoidant. This is why I know I can help people, because I don't have that anymore. I don't have any of the signs or symptoms of that, but I used to have every one of them, and it's all KI because it's all based in unprocessed emotion. The signs and symptoms of that are, it's just as you can imagine, avoiding people, places, and things that might bring up rejection or criticism. Like you wouldn't do karaoke. It's too threatening to expose yourself like that. You might only want to be in relationships where you know you're going to be accepted. Like I would always fall in love with a friend, which was safe because I was already accepted. I wouldn't do karaoke, for example. I just disconnected from close relationships and never put myself in a situation in which I might get angry. So really, really avoidant relationships. I mean, there's more to it. My whole life was this thing. But I don't have any of that now. And so this is why I'm teaching around embodying presence, especially for people with trauma, because we don't see what's driving it. So I did a video this weekend and quite a few people watched it. There's some interest in avoidant patterning in spirituality. So I want to give you the beginnings of a solution here today for people who have this. But can we further define it? Because you don't have to, you can Google the signs and symptoms of avoidant personality disorder, but we have to be really, really careful with that, plus the attachment styles, because once we're in our head about it, we're going to miss the fact that it's being driven by the body. So if you go into your body right now and pull up people close to you, and you say, I don't have to get away from them. Say it several times and see if your body responds as if you have to get away. Or you can say, I don't need them to leave me alone. Feel that in your body? I don't need space. So if you feel that, there's conditioning that's driving you in every relationship to get away from people. But you're not really afraid of people. You're afraid of the emotions that you buried. So disconnecting from relationships and coming to spirituality isn't the answer, because you'll bring those same buried emotions and the same getaway conditioning to your path or practice. So it starts like, this is why narcissism can look like avoidance. And this is why a lot of people who are in relationships with avoidant attachment style, they might think I'm with a narcissist. And the people who are doing the avoidance, they have no clue how that looks and feels because they're just staying safe. And avoidance might tell themselves like, well, I'm going over here to wake up or do this self-help. But it's coming from, I have to get away from my partner, or away from people. And then the processes that we often do in spirituality don't make that conditioning conscious. So we love bomb a practice or a teacher. Like, this is great. This thing that I found, this is going to be it. And then after the love bomb stage, we discard the practice. We become uninterested, or just like we would with a partner. And we start to fantasize about another practice, and that would be better. And that keeps us safe from going deep in this practice. Just like the avoidant who might disconnect from their partner and might not cheat, but might think about it and fantasize about how that would be perfect, all to keep the avoidant safe. So the avoidant that does this in relationship comes to do this in KI. The love bomb stage, followed by discarding, disconnecting, and moving on. And so no wonder people are throwing the narcissist thing around, because it's not really narcissism. It's narcissistic, but it's actually self-protective. Whereas the narcissist might actually have an inflated sense of self, the grandiose narcissist, or a lot of arrogance. That's not the avoidant. Fear. Just plain old fear. And avoidants need love, so they can feel empathy. All those times when I was disconnecting, it wasn't that I was a narcissist. I had really deep empathy, but I was scared. Some of my behavior didn't look very empathetic. Is that the word? Empathetic? Empathic. But still, I had that. I very, very much needed love and felt very loving. But I was scared. So whenever I would pick a partner who would be anxiously attached, forget it. It's like, I don't even know why I chose you, but I have to get away. And then I would have trouble leaving the relationship because I couldn't express anger. I would feel stuck. So then I just chose avoidant partners who would let me do whatever I wanted. That was my first marriage. And I kept going and having sex outside of the marriage. Well, because we had an open relationship. He did too. But that allowed me to fantasize about these other men and keep from going deep with him. And then I had an opportunity to cheat, but I didn't. Like, emotionally, I ended the relationship. But I can totally see how teachers cheat on their wives, because it's avoidance. It's unmet needs. Like, if we can turn back to your wife and say what's true, express our needs and wants, express even stuff that's unprocessed, we have a different relationship, and we can end relationships from a cleaner place and a more honest place, set boundaries. Even what I've noticed is that once I can express anger, I can stay in relationships, because now intimacy is possible through emotional repression work. With anger repression, I couldn't be intimate. So no wonder I was trying to get away. The repression and the getaway conditioning, or leave me alone, are totally connected. So now here's the solution in a nutshell, so that you have something to take away here. It's just a few things if you want to write them down. Be mindful of the pattern. If you're an anger repressor and you're disconnecting from your partner, you won't feel the anger, but you're raging, and that's why you're getting away. So you want to discover that when you're walking away or going to the YouTube video to watch the teacher, that right there you're seething with anger, but it's unconscious. It's just a contraction. And you're managing that contraction by watching the videos for the teachers that point to presence. I won't do it, because what it does is it helps people regulate their system and be lulled into a false sense of being aware. But it's all avoidance, because it's the anger or other repression that drove you to spirituality. So if I'm not pointing to the thing that drove you here, then I'm just helping you regulate your system and bamboozle yourself into thinking that you're free. But until you can go back to your relationship and be authentic, and if I'm not focused on that as a teacher, you see, then I'm part of it, the problem. I'm helping you. I'm enabling you to disconnect and not be authentic. by referring to this awareness over here without referring to what drives the suffering. So you want to be mindful of the pattern. That's number one. Part of being mindful is doing utility journal. So now that you've discovered repression and I have to get away, when you see yourself disconnecting from people close to you, stop, journal it. Feel into and see if you have to get away. You say, I don't have to get away, and you'll feel it. And then if you bury anger, see if the anger is there as you're getting away, or the hurt that's buried. So it would just be the contraction that tells you that. But then once you know that, you can journal. You can say, what do I get out of believing that I have to get away? You write that down, and you become more mindful of the unconsciousness there, which basically says, I have to get away to stay safe and get love. And then if you see that you're coming from buried anger in the moment when you're pulling away, you would find that anger and do a utility journal. What do I get out of being angry but not expressing it, for example? I stay safe and get love. So if you do that, every time you disconnect, you're backing yourself into a corner and starting to own your own suffering. Because anything else that you're telling yourself gets thrown in the trash. So in other words, if you say to yourself, well, no, I'm not disconnecting. I'm just going over here to be with this teacher. But you go into your body and you realize you're just trying to get away. Well, then you can't just buy into the spiritual search in the same way. You start going into your body and seeing why you're going to the YouTube video to disconnect. See that? Or you start to learn that after the love bomb stage with KI, you start to want to leave us or disconnect. But as you do, you write down in your journal, what do I get out of getting away from this repression work? I stay safe and get love. So before you leave KI, I'm inviting you to have journaled your disconnection and avoidance, and to see that it's coming from, you're not afraid of people, you're afraid of what you buried, and that's driving you away from people and away from practices that could help. So if you leave KI, at least leave with that understanding, because if you don't, we're just another lover that you disconnected from. And just like all the lovers that you disconnected from, you don't do an exit interview. A lot of people just disconnect. You don't talk to us. We don't talk to you. So I'll talk to you now in case you're going to do this here and never reach out to us, is that what we're doing here is something really special. If you can understand it, this is an awakening path, but we're getting to the trauma that drives the suffering. So there may be other paths or practices out there, but be careful, because the one that we have here makes that conditioning conscious directly. So it doesn't hem-haw around in stories or identities or shadows or things that are safer. It gets to the actual programming that drives us. And that's scary for the avoidant. So what I'm seeing is a lot of avoidants are coming here. That's not who you are. You're not an avoidant. But you have that patterning. A lot of it is anger repression. And you're interested because you do want freedom. But then after the love bomb, you go quiet and you don't know why. And I know why. If you'll stick around me, I want to show it to you so that you don't treat us like just one lover in a string of lovers that you never, with whom you never got to discover yourself. KI is a lover where you get to meet yourself for the first time. If you don't do that, you're probably not going to introduce yourself to anyone unless you find another method that makes conscious this conditioning that has you stuck in avoidance. Is that clear enough as a solution? Here's the other thing before I go. I see a lot of people with avoidance. They're looking for the wham bam, thank you ma'am experience, the big release, and that's just more of the avoidance. So instead of doing the real work of making conscious how they're constantly getting away from everyone, they just want to have an experience or a shift and just be done with it all. That's the same repression and unprocessed emotion talking. Because a really mature trauma approach recognizes that you don't want to be free, that you're staying safe by avoiding, and that's what you want at the unconscious level. So if you understand and learn that that's all that you want, then you can get free. Just don't tell yourself lies. If you really want to be free, tell yourself the truth of your experience. Go into your body and see. It's not about enlightenment. It's about getaway. It's not about freedom. It's about, I'm just trying to stay safe. And then once you make conscious the conditioning that's just trying to stay safe and get love and hold yourself back, you get the freedom. Because you're finally being honest. And you're finally treating a lover differently. KI. If you're ready, you can take the repression test. That just gets you on the newsletter. And I notice a lot of avoidance will get on the newsletter and just sit there because they're in avoidance. But taking that step is so important. So if you can just journal some and see your avoidance, and then as that journal is there to show you the pattern, I think you'll be more and more drawn to learning this work. But I understand it's a process. So start with repressiontest.com. I may put some goodies down here in the comments if you want to get started with the work. But I have to tell you that we don't have a lot of urgency around people who are in avoidance treating this lover differently. I mean, because we understand that people have a right to suffer. So I want you to remember something before I go. We don't mind if you don't get to the patterning because we're free. We've done this work, but you might. So listen to what I'm saying. If this pattern is here, you don't want to see through it. You might say that you do. You might tell yourself that you do. But until you go to the unconscious and see that you just want to get away and hold yourself back. You see the problem with spiritual context and even a lot of therapy? It's distracting. When the truth of it is very simple. I need love, but I'm afraid. Simple. Keep it simple. Thank you.